Tonight, Asia trip tensions, rare agreement between Democrats and Republicans over House Speaker Pelosi's expected trip to Taiwan.
We have global responsibilities, whether it comes to three things, I always say: security, economy, and governance.
Plus, mounting death toll. The devastation still coming into focus in the wake of historic flooding in Kentucky.
Don't forget about us. This isn't going to be something that's a week or 2 weeks. This is going to be months and years to rebuild.
All this and more on Faith Nation.
Diplomatic disagreement prompting military posturing. Welcome to Faith Nation in Washington. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Abigail Robertson. U.S.-China relations on the brink of further decline over a potential trip to Taiwan. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi kicking off her four-nation tour with a diplomatic bang.
China issuing a strong warning that its military will not sit idly by if Speaker Pelosi visits Taiwan, even though the island nation is not on her official itinerary. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke has been following the story and joins us now.
Caitlin, earlier President Biden signaled this trip wasn't a good idea. Is the White House now on board?
Abby, the new message from the White House is that the Biden administration will support Speaker Pelosi if she chooses to visit Taiwan. National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, John Kirby, saying today there's nothing new about congressional delegations visiting the island.
There is no reason for Beijing to turn a potential visit consistent with long-standing U.S. policy into some sort of crisis or conflict, or use it as a pretext to increase aggressive military activity in or around the Taiwan Strait.
The subject of the speaker visiting Taiwan also has bipartisan support, Republicans praising Pelosi's long-standing opposition to the human rights abuses of Beijing and determination to support Taiwan.
I hope she doesn't back down. As I've said before, though I disagree with Speaker Pelosi on almost every issue, and I won't be sad to see her go come the next Congress, on this issue, she actually does have a long track record, going back to Tiananmen Square, of being willing to criticize the Chinese Communist Party and stand up to Taiwan.
Pelosi's travels coincide with the anniversary of the founding of the People's Liberation Army. Over the weekend, Beijing sent a message by conducting live-fire military drills off its coast, just across from Taiwan. Monday, China's foreign ministry spokesman made clear if the speaker visits Taiwan, it will lead to, quote, a very serious situation and consequences. While not providing specifics as to any consequences, he added, the People's Liberation Army will not sit by idly.
This is part of what China calls its wolf diplomacy, where it intimidates, badgers, manipulates its neighbors and countries around the world to get its way.
President Biden spoke with Chinese President Xi Jinping for over 2 hours last week. According to a statement from Beijing, in reference to Taiwan, President Xi warned Biden, those who play with fire will perish by it.
In some meaningful sense, the invasion of Taiwan has already begun. This is part of it. They're preparing the battle space. They're trying to make us afraid. They're trying to convince the Taiwanese that they cannot count on us, and we need to stand up to that growing aggression.
In terms of the timing of a Pelosi visit, there's speculation that she will arrive on the island Tuesday, spend the night, and then hold meetings on Wednesday. The speaker has said the focus of her Asia trip is on mutual security, economic partnership, and democratic governance. Abigail, John.
Thank you, Caitlin. And here with us now is Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us tonight on Faith Nation.
Thank you very much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Now, on the topic of high tensions with China, we'd be remiss not to bring up that China is one of the worst countries for human trafficking, with forced labor camps and detention.
Yes.
I know that this is an issue near and dear to your heart. So what do you think the U.S. should be doing to target China for human trafficking violations?
Well, we need to do far more. They are a Tier 3 country. I wrote the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, which is our landmark law, and it ranks countries as to how well or poorly they're doing in the area of prevention, prosecution, and protection. And they are absolute failures on all three. What's happening in Xinjiang with the Uyghurs in the concentration camps, the forced abortion that has led to a huge increase in women being trafficked because of the missing females, something on the order of 60 million over the course of that one child per couple policy. So there's been all kinds of dire, horrible consequences, and we need to be stronger. Biden has been very weak on human rights towards China. He has not spoken out. I mean, you're talking about the trip with Pelosi. I follow ever since we left Afghanistan in such a infamous way and disastrous way. I read the People's Daily and other news media out of China every day in English, and they're constantly saying to Taiwan, America won't have your back in any way, shape, or form. They've already shown their true colors. Yes.
Along those lines, prior to, as Caitlin was just reporting, prior to the White House now saying that they would support Speaker Pelosi if she does travel to Taiwan, the president of the White House said it was a potential bad idea. Why do you think the White House isn't doing more to counteract China's belligerence?
It's a great question, and there's very little transparency. There are no hearings of oversight with the makers and policymakers from this administration, and that is that just means they're operating in a vacuum. Congress is not held to account, and the Democrats are in control. When we take control, which we hope will happen next year, when we're all sworn in again, we need to do vigorous oversight. I've chaired 76 congressional hearings on human rights abuses in China. As chairman of the Lantos Commission, I held one just a few weeks ago on the despicable organ harvesting, that was in May, which the Chinese government is engaged in. 50 to 100,000 people, Falun Gong, Christians, Uyghurs, average age 28, and they take their organs to make money. Added to that, under this Green New Deal work and electric cars, I just had a hearing 2 weeks ago, a little over 2 weeks ago, on another despicable practice. In order to get cobalt, which is needed for those what do you call it, the
semiconductors
for those cars, the mining interests in the Democratic Republic of Congo have been taken over by the Chinese, and they've cornered that market. So this administration, under the guise of environmentalism, is looking askance when it comes to human rights abuses. Same way with solar energy coming out of Xinjiang. Right. So it's just and they know, they being the Chinese, how weak Biden has been his entire career when it comes to human rights. This is just the latest manifestation, and it couldn't come at a worse time.
And Congressman, your legislation to combat human trafficking gained rare bipartisan support in Congress last week. What will this new bill do to help prevent human trafficking?
Great question. A lot of things. It's a very important bill. It reauthorizes some of the existing programs, and I've written many of those in the original TVPA of 2000. But it goes into the area of prevention, of making sure our school-aged children, in an age-appropriate way, are situationally aware of trafficking, and their teachers, and so we teach the teachers as well as the students K through 12. There's language in there that further expands the international Megan's Law. We've already had well over 7,000 convicted pedophiles who have been turned down at borders all over the world because we noticed them. I wrote the original international Megan's Law. This further expands and strengthens that important initiative. And then we also provide help to the women to make sure that, for instance, in the area of economic empowerment, that they get help with wraparound services. Housing is included in the bill. If you don't have a house or a home or a rental, and it's usually a rental, of course, you're more likely to be re-trafficked. And if you're poor, being preyed upon by the predators, you need that. If you're homeless, you're much more vulnerable. So that's all in the bill.
Well, Congressman, we're going to have to leave it there tonight, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Well, we are learning more about the catastrophic flooding in Kentucky, the climbing death toll claiming the lives of at least 35 people, including young children.
Kentucky's governor adding a chilling disclaimer that hundreds of people are still unaccounted for. CBN's Brody Carter is following the latest developments and spoke with Operation Blessing workers helping those hardest hit.
Abigail, John, this is Kentucky's worst flood in 50 years, and more rain is expected. As rescue workers try to account for missing children, missing families, searching for signs of life, CBN's Operation Blessing is on the ground. They're distributing water and other essential items.
Grateful that my family made it out and the Lord took real good care of us.
Survivors in Kentucky's foothills are counting their blessings after the death toll more than doubled over the weekend, and it's expected to climb.
We know it's going to grow. With the level of water, we're going to be finding bodies for weeks. Many of them swept hundreds of yards, maybe quarter-mile plus from where they were lost.
Governor Andy Beshear is asking for prayer for the Appalachian region after some parts received 8 to 10.5 inches of rain in just 48 hours. Flash flooding swept homes off foundations, leaving behind a path of destruction in some of the nation's poorest counties.
It's just things, you know. I have a beautiful wife and 4 baby girls and the 11-day-old right now. She said, we're safe.
As people dig their homes out of the mud, remove heavy debris, and try to save keepsakes, volunteers and humanitarian groups like Operation Blessing are on the ground, delivering pallets of water and Home Depot disaster relief kits.
But not only that, we're coming alongside the pastors, praying with them and giving the local church the support that they need and helping them deliver supplies. And also we're setting up our operations to where we can mobilize volunteers.
National Guard helicopters have rescued more than 400 people. They could remain busy. However, further flooding is expected if the forecast for excessive rainfall comes to fruition.
Don't forget about us. This isn't going to be something that's a week or 2 weeks. This is going to be months and years to rebuild.
Local churches are using this time to help physically and spiritually.
But we know that all things work together for the good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose.
There, blistering heat, humidity expected in the days to come as shelters have opened for hundreds. The White House has declared a federal disaster to free up direct relief money to more than a dozen Kentucky counties. Brody Carter, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Brody. Well, tomorrow is primary day. When we come back, the states to watch and why Arizona may prove to be a bellwether for Republicans trying to claw back power from Democrats.
Welcome back. It's hard to believe that in less than 100 days, voters head to the polls for the midterm elections. But we're still in primary season, where certain races are getting extra attention.
That's right, Abigail. One of those races, Arizona, which could be a bellwether for Republicans. As CBN's Mount Galka explains, observers see the governor's race as one of the more prominent contests to watch.
Both major GOP candidates in Arizona's primary for governor are feuding over which one carries the true Republican banner. Below the surface, the race is seen as a high-stakes battle between Donald Trump's MAGA movement and the traditional party establishment.
People of Arizona are going to fire the radical left Democrats. You are going to elect a truly great woman who I've gotten to know very well, Kari Lake, as your next governor.
Lake, a former TV news anchor, obtained the coveted endorsement early on. She stood side by side with the former president in Arizona in the run-up to the state's primary.
No one understands better than Kari how to fight back against the fake news media and the radical left. They're partners. They're partners for whatever reason.
Do we love this man or what?
Lake has courted many of the former president's voters, likely familiar with her from decades as an Arizona newscaster. Her rival heading into the primary, Karen Taylor Robeson, didn't have that built-in name recognition, but she has closed that gap with ad spending and the backing of the more traditional wing of the party. While Lake appeared with Trump, Robeson had former Vice President Mike Pence and current Arizona Governor Doug Ducey in her corner.
I'm here because Arizona and America need Karen Taylor Robeson as the next governor of Arizona.
Mike Pence has led and lived his conservative values. Boy, do we miss him in office right now.
Arizona has been a focal point of the 2020 election allegations, leading to a high-profile audit that turned up no evidence of wrongdoing. Though Lake and Robeson both believe there were issues with the election results, they also accuse each other of being a fake Republican while pointing to past Democratic ties. So where are Arizona voters heading?
What was once a competitive race between Kari Lake and Karen Taylor Robeson
shows that our latest polling that Kari Lake is, the voters are breaking heavy and hard towards Lake.
One prominent Arizona polling firm has Lake dominating by double digits.
If it was based on the amount of money spent on TV and endorsements, Robeson should be carrying the day. But it's not. Lake is clearly breaking away, and I think that it's just, it's a new world ever since Trump came on board in this battle in the GOP. But right now, the Trump folks have the upper hand.
Now, while that may be just one poll, most others have featured Lake in the lead. Ahead of Tuesday's primary, Lake's campaign has alleged fraud in the primary vote, but has declined to get into specifics. Matt Gelka, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Matt. Joining us now for more CBN News, Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, let's start where Matt just left off. Do you think the winner of the governor's race in Arizona will help define the true nature of the Republican Party, kind of a proxy battle between Trump and Pence, if you will?
Absolutely, John. It is a proxy battle. And I may be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time in history that I'm wrong. Just ask my wife. Just kidding. But look, I think that it's going to be a trifecta of victories for the Trump wing, the populist wing in Arizona. I say trifecta. What do I mean? Well, we heard Matt talk about Kari Lake. I think she's going to win the primary. I think Mark Fincham is up for Secretary of State. He believes this election was rigged and stolen, or the 2020 election was rigged and stolen. I think he's going to win. And then you got Blake Masters, who also has major concerns about the election. He's the U.S. Senate candidate on the Republican side. I think he's going to win. I think they're going to go 3 for 3. Why? Because the energy clearly is there in Arizona specifically. That's why I'm making those predictions. I don't normally make predictions, but I think in Arizona, that's where the momentum is, guys.
Well, David, another closely watched race tomorrow is the Senate primary in Missouri. What are you looking for in this race?
This has been a wild one. You know, Eric Greitens has wanted that Trump endorsement all along. He may have obviously get it here at the end, but the bottom line is that Eric Schmidt and his campaign is showing some polling here recently that puts Eric Schmidt in the lead over Eric Greitens. Of course, Eric Greitens has a lot of baggage, if you will, in terms of politics as it relates to some past scandals and all of that. But we're going to find out. This will be interesting. I have no idea of what's going to happen here, but Donald Trump is not happy that Eric Schmidt put out some polling that Trump thinks is fake, showing that Trump support is low in Missouri. And so that's kind of been an interesting last-minute wrinkle here.
Interesting indeed. All right, CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome back. The very first grain shipments made it out of Ukraine today, marking the first time they've left the country since the Russian invasion began.
Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine is resulting in Moscow putting pressure on Israel. As CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl tells us, it could stop Russian Jews from immigrating to Israel.
In a Moscow court on Thursday, Russia's Justice Ministry moved to ban operations of the Jewish Agency. While foreign organizations have faced increasing pressure in Russia for years, threats recently ramped up.
For the last 8 years, since Russia started its war against Ukraine, when they occupied Crimea, they were demanding that they stop collecting information about citizens of Russia and transferring it to the West. But of course, for Jewish Agency, it's a ridiculous demand because that's exactly what Jewish Agency is doing.
The Jewish Agency is responsible for worldwide immigration to Israel. Former chairman Natan Sharansky, a Russian Jew and human rights advocate, helped clear the way for the exodus of 2 million Soviet Jews starting in 1986.
We should not be desperate. At the same time, I'm warning all our friends in Russia and Ukraine that those who are seriously thinking about Aliyah should better do it as quickly as possible, because the situation is worsening very quickly.
Nearly 20,000 Russian Jews have immigrated to Israel since the invasion started, along with some 16,000 Ukrainian Jews.
And there are another 20,000 in the pipeline. My estimation is that approximately 3 times more Jews will come from Russia than from Ukraine.
In Russia, he says, citizens are losing freedoms at such a rate, it's a reminder of communist Soviet rule.
Wow. When I sentenced for high treason, exactly in what Jewish Agency is accused now. The only freedom which is still left is freedom of immigration. And who knows how long it will exist. That's why Jews who are concerned, they are finding themselves in fierce society, in closed society, they're in a hurry to leave.
Pinchas Goldschmidt, who served as chief rabbi of Moscow, couldn't return from a trip because he didn't support the war in Ukraine. He's now in exile.
These are complicated times, and the many dark clouds on the horizon, also for the Jewish community. And this has been reflected in a great exodus of members of the Jewish community who have left Russia since the beginning of the war.
Svetlana and her husband made Aliyah from Russia 2 months ago. We've hidden her identity to protect her family in Russia.
We are very happy that we made this decision. The political tension is rising, and the activity of Sokhnut is apparently being questioned at the moment by Russian authorities. Not a lot of people can actually leave.
Rabbi Goldschmidt says tens of thousands more Jews in Moscow with Israeli citizenship simply left. He expects the trend to continue. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Julie. Coming up, remembering a basketball legend who transformed the face of sports both on and off the court. Next.
And finally tonight, a huge loss for sports fans. The Boston Celtics remember the life of Bill Russell and his unrelenting pursuit of victory, both on and off the court.
Russell, a Hall of Famer and cornerstone of the Celtics dynasty, led the franchise to 11 championship wins in 13 years, becoming the NBA's first black head coach after his 8th consecutive title, and then even winning more championships for Boston. He was also a champion of civil rights, helping reimagine the role of athletes in society. Russell also received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2011 for defending the rights and dignity of all people. Russell died Sunday. He was 88. And really just a remarkable amount of influence that he had, not just on the basketball court, but in life in general.
Yes, and 88. What a life well lived.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
We'll see you tomorrow.